Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kitchener-Waterloo Rally Club annual banquet online. We're doing a series of live stream Skype interviews in lieu of our normal process of having guest speakers. Today, we're starting our first live stream. We're very fortunate to have Mr. Robbie Durant, a championship-winning co-driver, to talk to us today. He and I will be having a brief discussion to begin the live stream, probably for about a half an hour. In the meantime, please feel free to post your questions into the live chat. They'll be curated and we'll ask the best ones to Robbie at the second half of the stream. So, with pleasure, I'd like to introduce Mr. Robbie Durant. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, good evening or good afternoon where you guys are. Thank you for having me.
We're very eager to talk to you. I mean, you have a huge number of accolades to your name. You've rallied literally around the world. One of your more recent accomplishments is American Rally Association champion, co-driver. You've ridden at the top end of the sport, but I'm sure that our membership is very interested to hear how you got your start in the sport.
Yeah, that's true actually. Sometimes you kind of gloss over your beginnings, or you end up so focused on the events you're doing and the series you're in, and you don't think back. But knowing that that's of interest to a lot of people, then I gave it some thought. And actually, my background or my family background is not motorsport or engineering really whatsoever. So it wasn't through immediate family members. I actually had a good friend of mine growing up. We met each other when we were 5 or 6 years old. He lived next door, but one, I think, in the same town as me. We were at school together, and it was his family that were really the motorsport heads and the interested parties in that kind of thing. His father was competing in rally at a club level, amateur, just for fun, had always done it. I think when he had started to have kids, he'd done a bit less, of course, like a lot of people, but he'd done a lot of rally and he knew the scene and he had some good contacts, and that's how we got stuck in. And from age 7, 8, 9, we were on farms and fields on ATVs and anything we could make with wheels that would push ourselves around, and going to watch his dad go compete, and all those kind of common themes and common stories that many of us have. But we're a little bit older then. We must have been early teenagers, I guess, and my friend ended up karting, go-kart racing. Of course, only one person, but you can race from age almost 3 or 4 now, right? But back then, maybe you could race from 8 or 10 years old, and we were perhaps 11 or 12, and I would go along at the weekends, help him in the evenings, do whatever we could as 12-year-olds to get things prepped and ready and organized and get to the events. And they were ended up in 2-stroke karts, which of course used to be push start. So I'd be one of the pushers and I'd do the lap timing and then all these kind of auxiliary jobs. But really I knew and he knew and his family knew that rally was really where it was gonna go. And once we turned 17 and driver's licenses became, on our doorstep and tests were taken, and he called me one day and he said, "Right, I've got a rally car and there's a spare seat and you're in." And so all those years of standing on the side of the circuit or side of the track and watching, and suddenly it was my turn to compete, and that really is how we got going.
I'm sure a lot of our membership will really enjoy hearing this, because a lot of them were very heavily involved in volunteering at events, at marshalling, at servicing, organizing, and those sorts of things. So to hear someone say, yeah, I sort of started in that background and then moved into the competition side, I'm sure it gives a lot of hope to a lot of our membership. Going from the very early days of, as I understand it, you started in the 2-wheel drive and, correct me if I'm wrong, but British Junior Championship. Going from that to sort of the pointy end of the sport, what sort of things allowed you to grow into the faster cars, into the faster speeds, into the higher end of the sport? Was it just innate talent, or were there other tools, training that you did?
Yeah, a combination of all of the above, with less of the talent at the beginning, I'm sure. It was so many small steps and so many people and so many events along the way that all give you learning and give you experience. And initially, I mean, I was a sport that was reasonably popular in the UK at that time. There was obviously there'd been a British round of the World Championships for many years, but I was in the south of England, and I was not far away from a couple of the big rally teams, as well as the grassroots level competitions. The UK is a small place. You've only got to go 2 hours up the road and you're in Wales, or 4 hours and you're in southern Scotland and you're in the forests again, and it's no distance. So we would head out at the weekends. If we weren't competing, we'd head to an event to watch or to go and talk to other competitors. But really, it's, as I said, lots of small steps, just lining up on your first event or first few events with no real goals set, just learning, trying to get to the end of the event with no mistakes is the first thing, trying not to make any errors as a co-driver, trying to help the driver to learn, because you're both going through it together. We started, my friend Johnny Wigmore, when I was co-driving with him, he was as new to it as I was, so we had some guidance from his family, and his dad's co-driver, and this is what you need to do and this is how you should do it. But until you get in there and get stuck in and see if it's for you, it's a very daunting prospect. But we did, and we enjoyed it, and we learnt a lot, actually, and we were lucky that we could go to so many events, even if we weren't competing on lots of them. And just, stand at time controls, talk to volunteers, go and walk around service areas and see what people were doing, and point at things and say, oh, we wouldn't do it like that, or we would do it like that, or whatever. That was very fortunate. So we got wet and cold a lot, but we learnt a lot. Moving forward from that, some of the more formal stuff, it does come through rally clubs and organisations, and there was some support back when I was learning in early 2000s from the governing body for the Motorsports Association, as was in the UK, had a British Rally Academy, as it was called back then, which it was a fantastic program. Maybe 6 or 8 people a year were taken on to the program, and we had some real top level instruction and tuition from Robert Reed and Glenn Patterson, who was co-driving for Chris Meek at the time. Some real high-end guys, as well as some sports trainers and some medical people, and a real nice high-end program that actually fast-forwarded a lot of the learning for me and other guys. And I was very fortunate to be part of that for 2 or 3 years. I wouldn't say it necessarily pushed me further in the sport, but I could go back after an event and I could say, I've got these questions, and what should I do here, and how should I approach this? And the guys would have been there. They've all been there. They'd all seen it. I could say, I didn't read that quite right in the regulations. Where should I look for that next time? Or, we missed a junction on the road book because of something that I should have interpreted better. How should I do that? And it was just having that network, like clubs are, to be able to ask people and not feel daft because everyone's been there,
Fantastic. Now, you've translated those early experiences into a wealth of success. That requires traveling at pretty significant speeds in sketchy conditions. And a big part of what allows you to do that is the trust and rapport that you end up building between driver and co-driver. Talk a little bit about how you build that rapport and the importance of it.
Yeah, it really is the biggest factor, really, in terms of the performance of the rally car. You can have the best tires, the best suspension, the fastest engine, but if the two people in the car aren't working together or not completely trusting and understanding each other, it's all a waste. And that comes certainly from all the very successful drivers and co-drivers I've seen or worked with. It's starting at the bottom, starting at the beginning, taking the small steps, and bit by bit expanding and growing and learning and building on what experience you've gained. You can't read pace notes in a top car if you haven't done it in a slow car. You can't make pace notes for a fast car if you haven't made them for a slow car. And it all translates. So the job gets made a lot easier having gone through all those shortcuts. And I think it's the same with circuit race as well. You look at the champions in road racing, and they've come from a background of either go-karting or slower cars or things where you can take some time to to make those bad decisions and get away with it, or it not cost quite so much, and then move forward. And for me, that was a real key thing, was to get a feel for what a co-driver did and how they worked and how they could influence and work with a driver. And to start with, all you're doing is trying to do a good job. You're trying not to make any mistakes and get them through the event and not incur any penalties. That's rule number one. and then you're trying to give them the pace notes or the maps or the instructions at a time that seems somewhat sensible so they can act on it and not crash and not go too slow or too fast or whatever. But once you move on from that, then the role of a co-driver can be quite key to the performance, because you're a second pair of eyes, you're a second set of feelings in the car, you're a second set of feedback to the team. And a driver will sometimes say, they especially the top level drivers, they'll often look to the co-driver to say, what did I do there? And what did you think about that? And when you sat with X driver, what did they say? And what would they have done here? And they're looking for that little bit of performance as well. So between you, you're really trying to find the little gains all the time, especially at the top level.
Now, you've had a lot of different drivers over the years. How do you adapt from one driver to the next, their wants, their needs, the pacing of the notes, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's there's no right or wrong answer. First of all, you've got to get along and trust and respect each other from the outset. Most of the time, when you start off in the sport, it's going to be with someone you know. There's a reasonable chance that, for me, certainly it was a good friend, so we had that trust anyway and that relationship anyway. But even if it's not, it's probably someone you've decided to get into the sport with, or from an event or two, or the chances are you're not turning up on day one with someone you've never met. That's probably not a good idea, to be fair. But yeah, you really are making sure you get along as people, and drivers and co-drivers are a different breed. The co-drivers are sort of the office manager, and the drivers are kind of the performer and the artist, if you like, and they're the ones that are really driving the performance of the car. But the co-drivers is what's making that happen, and there's what's giving them the tools to do that. So you've got to build that trust. With the fast guys, it's almost easier because they have a track record you can look back on and you can say, well, if I don't like that track record, it's not for me. With guys that are more unknown or a bit more, even the amateur guys, so it's harder to find their results. It's harder to see how they got on, or were they really fast in a slow car, or were they really slow in a fast car? You don't necessarily know this. And if they've crashed, was it because the car wasn't prepared very well, or is it because they're just making crazy mistakes and you can't do anything about that? So it's not easy to get to do that. But again, it comes back to the rally community. Ask other people, get it, who co-drove for them before. Did they think it was if they avoid the question, then you know to be a little bit wary. But for instance, I knew in this latest role I've had with Travis, ignoring obviously 2020 with the COVID thing, and Rhiannon, as I think you'll speak with in a few weeks, has obviously stepped in there for the time being. But I knew Travis anyway because we'd never competed in the same car, but we'd done maybe 20 events together as competing against each other as competitors. So I kind of knew his approach, he knew my approach. We weren't completely new to each other, even though we'd never worked together in the car. It wouldn't have been a good idea to then say, oh yeah, let's sign up and do a whole season. And we both knew that. So we thought, well, we may get along and we might be friends, but if it doesn't work in the car, it's no good. So at this point, fast forwarding here a long way, but we agreed to do maybe a couple of events just to see how things go. And we'd leave it open. We said we'll do 2 events and we'll talk again. And if those 2 events go reasonably well and we think we could work together going forward, then we'll talk about it. And if not, then we'll be open and we'll say, look, I respect your skills, you respect mine, but it doesn't work out. And sometimes that is the case.
Now, a lot of people feel like they can walk into a room, meet somebody, and have a good read on them almost right away. It kind of opens up an interesting question, what you just said about, okay, let's do 2 events and see how it goes. How quickly, when you're sat in the co-driver's seat, you're reading notes, you've gotten up to some speed, how quickly do you know this is going to work or this isn't going to work? And what sort of cues do you use to tell yourself that?
Yeah, I think very quickly. Partly, I think it's probably experience. Having sat with some drivers, you think actually you're driving beyond your limits, or you're driving beyond the pace notes, or you're driving beyond the conditions or the car, and some are very, very good, but drive within everything. So they're driving at 95% everywhere, and therefore, you're not necessarily going to go out and win very much because the other guys are driving at 100%. So you know quite quickly, and then it's up to yourselves to whether that's something you want to go with, and you think, well, actually, we can build on something here, or it's something that you think, hang on, it's not for me. And there's always areas to improve. It's never a finished deal. It's never a completed job. You're always looking for things. And drivers, in my experience, will often ask me and say, okay, I get a little bit stuck on this part of the pace notes. When the corner does this particular thing, I don't know how to write it, or I could do better at that. And they will ask because their goal is performance, and their goal is to find the tiny little gains. And they will say, I'm not very good at this bit. It's all relative. They're pretty good at everything, but they'll find something. And then if I can help that, then I will. If I can say to them, actually, I think these two stages are really muddy and really wet, and the third one of this loop is actually a lot drier, but the two together are much longer in distance, we should take this tyre. Maybe I wouldn't phrase it as we should do, but maybe I should say it'd be better to take this tyre, or have you thought about that? They could say, oh yeah, okay, that was interesting, that was good. And again, you're just using the two people that you've got in the car. With circuit racing and many other forms of motorsport, there's just one person to make all those decisions. But with two of you, you might as well use both people, you know.
You mentioned other motorsports and whatnot, and that opens up a question I personally find that's been on the top of my mind. Please talk a little bit about your experiences working on the Red Bull Formula One pit crew. What was that like, and were there anything that you picked up from there that allowed you to translate it over into the rally world?
Yes, I've had this sort of parallel career or life, if you like, for like the last 20 years of working within the motorsports industry. Again, being in the south of the UK, it's kind of feels like I'm immersed in it most of the time, and then competing and co-driving as well. And some years I've done more of one, and some years I've done more of the other. But to this point, I'm kind of still juggling the two. As I say, just winding back to 2012, I got a reasonably big injury and had a couple of years where I didn't co-drive at all. And that was then when I got back into F1 full time, and we ended up, back with Red Bull again and on the pit crew. 2015, this would have been. But yeah, very, very similar, especially to the high end side of the sport, because it's all about the small gains. It's all about the marginal differences, and it's all about teamwork and trying to do your job and your team's job better than the guys next door. For us as a pit crew, you're not just a pit crew, you're the guys that are there setting up the garage at the start of the week, building the cars in the middle of the week, running the cars on the events, then the pit stops on the Sunday, then packing it all down. So you're all there together, you're there working for the week, and it's the same as on a reasonably long rally. You know, the British Championship events we used to do, I remember leaving home, and this is the UK, right? So there's hardly any travelling. So I remember leaving home on a Monday morning, 8 a.m, because the rally was the following weekend. And we would leave home. Tuesday would be some paperwork, signing on, maybe shakedown, whatever. Tuesday afternoon and Wednesday would be recce. Thursday the rally would start. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, maybe finish. Come home Sunday night if you're lucky. And it was like a week long. And it's the same as an F1 event for a British Championship event. And times have changed. They're not like that anymore. But yeah, certainly high-end motorsport, the parallels are there, definitely. And it's all about teamwork.
You touched on being injured, and you've been injured in the car a couple of times. Most notably, I believe in 2017, you had a pretty significant back injury in the car. And if this is not a topic you're comfortable with, please feel free to change it. But if you had advice to up-and-coming co-drivers about the mindset required to get back into the car after an injury like that, what would you tell them? What sort of advice on mindset would you give them?
Yeah, well, just winding back briefly to getting injured in the first place, it reminds me of something that actually Robert Reid told me. Robert was co-driver to Richard Burns, the English world champion of, nearly 20 years ago now. He passed away with an unrelated tumour just after that. But he said to me, if you do anything for long enough, you're going to get all the outcomes. And what he was trying to say was, if you do enough rallies, you're going to get hurt sooner or later. And in the same instance, he was also trying to say, if you do enough rallies in a year, you're going to be sick for one of them. You're going to pick something, a bug up or whatever, and you just have to keep going. You can't find someone else to help. You can't have a day off. You just got to keep going. But what he was really saying with that was it will happen. And if you carry on with this as a career, or you carry on as a long-term thing and you do it seriously, you'll get hurt. And back in early to mid 2000s, the biggest injuries for co-drivers at the time and in subsequent, later life, if you like, was back injuries. This time, the head and neck, the hands devices or frontal impact devices, of which there are a couple now, have massively reduced neck injuries and frontal impacts from whiplash and what have you. But back injuries and compression specifically are still something that's being worked on by everyone in safety in the sport. But for me, it was a question of, I got injured. It wasn't my choice to get injured, but it also wasn't my choice to stop co-driving at that point. I didn't want the injury to be my decision or to make my decision. And I knew that I had to stop when I felt comfortable to stop, and I wasn't ready to at that point. I took a good couple of years out, not really deliberately, but one, to properly recover, and then two, suddenly I was back in the circus of F1 again, and that was a commitment once I'd made. I wasn't obviously going to break, and then also looking for the right thing. There wasn't going to be many seats that I would have probably said, okay, let's give this a shot. It was something that I wanted to get back in at the top level and see not only if I could do it, if I was comfortable at it, but also when it came to an end, I wanted it to be my decision. And I think that's quite popular, or quite a common theme with injuries and sports people. They don't want the injury to make their mind up for them.
Fantastic. And we're really glad. It's a really good thing that you did just bounce right back, because you ended up winning the championship that year. So it paid off. And speaking of championships, you've rallied in China, you've rallied in America, you've rallied in Europe. What sort of things, what would you take away as highlights from each of those regions? What stands out in America or North America, because you've also rallied in Canada? What stands out in Europe, and what stands out in the East to you?
Yeah, interesting. Certainly in Europe and the UK to a point, the history or the backstory of the support and the fan base is really what strikes me. The events that you can go to, European Championship events that nobody's ever heard of outside of Europe or outside of that series, and you go there and you do an event, say, for instance, Gran Canaria, right? So a little tiny island off the west of Spain, roughly, holiday destination for Northern Europeans. I'd never been there. You go to
beautiful
rally,
people,
beautiful island, volcanic island, but amazing roads, tarmac rally, European Championship, and you think, where have all these people come from? And the roads are packed. They are packed 5 people deep for 20 kilometers, both sides of the road. And it's just a strip of brand new tarmac with Armco either side, winding through the volcanic mountains, and it's unbelievable. But that kind of thing, unless you go there, you've got no idea it's happening, and it just happens in its own bubble, and it works, and it's been happening for years and years. Likewise, you go to Scandinavia and you see the spectators and the history behind the events there, and that's really quite something as well. So that's probably what strikes me in Europe, and the depth of competition. You could go to an event in, say, Ypres in Belgium, a tarmac rally, very famous tarmac rally there, and there'll be 120 competitors maybe in the main event, in the historic event, and there'll be 100 in a junior or a open class event tacked on the side of it. So there'll be 300 competitors, roughly, all running the same roads, same weekend, all with service crews, chase crews, driver, co-driver, some team management, teams of all different sizes. But the town can host it. They've been doing it forever. The roads are amazingly well looked after in terms of policed when they're open, when they're closed, when you can get access, when you can't, and it just works because they've done it forever, which is somewhat different to China, only because it's not been happening for so long. I did only 3 events there with, we all know Higgins' name in North America, but with the other Higgins, if you like, with Mark 10 years ago or so now, and with Patrick Sandell, he was out there, and some Irish drivers as well. And long story short, but each of the domestic teams could employ one foreign driver or one foreign driver co-driver combination to score team points, but not driver points. So, of course, there's 4 or 5 of the big teams, and they were pretty big teams. Had two normal cars with domestic drivers, and then a third car each with a foreign driver. And Alistair McRae and Niall McShay and Patrick was out there a lot. Chris Atkinson did a lot out there. Mark and David, both for years and years and years. And the pace was pretty crazy. But the events it just felt like they were a lot more recently put together and a lot more fluid. The dates could change and the locations could change, and it all felt like, well, be ready for anything. It was good training. Be ready for anything to change, and you could rally. I think one event I remember returning from, it was Christmas Eve, getting home to the UK because, of course, Christmas Day was not such a thing in the Chinese calendar, so they weren't well into Christmas or ran into New Year or whatever. It's like, doesn't matter, it's running. Right. And then up to North America, you feel that actually the events are really well supported. You have these regional clubs, much like yourselves, all around North America that I had no idea about 15 years ago, but they actually run their own event or events, depending on the areas, really, really well, and have been doing it for a long time. And it shows, and you get there, the organisers know what roads they're going to run, they've got their documentation sorted, and they've got quite a big field of competitors, often local, because you live in such huge countries, from my point of view anyway. Local competitors, and you've got an event that again would run without the outside world, me included, knowing much about, which it all feels different. Rallying around the world feels different, but the same, if that makes sense.
Okay. Interesting. Speaking of North America, do you have a favorite event that you've done on our side of the Atlantic?
I hoped you wouldn't ask that. I don't know. It's a good question. And what's really great actually about the North American events is there isn't so much tarmac rally, of course, but there are snow events, which I'd never done any of before I came out. I'd never done the World Championship snow events, but I did. I think Snowdrift was probably the first one I did up in northern Michigan, and then there was Pierce Neige with you guys, Tall Pines, which is toss a coin and see what you're going to get, and so all these different events make it's like saying what's your favorite event anywhere else in the world. It's like, well, hang on, we've got to narrow it down a bit. I would say the ones I've done in Canada, I did. We were talking before we went on air about our mutual acquaintance ACP. I did Rocky Mountain with ACP a few years ago, a few more years ago than that perhaps, and it was set in the middle of what felt like nowhere, to me anyway. And here I am, never been there, landed off the plane, maybe Calgary. Would that make sense? Or,
yes, that would make sense.
Yeah. Okay. Having never been there, and the expansiveness of the whole region, just you could feel it in that event, and the roads were fantastic. And again, you go there and everyone knows what they're doing, and the events run forever, and the roads were great, and it's like, wow, this is all just happening, and I had no idea. Nice. But that was a really great Canadian event, and in America, if we split it above and below the border for you guys. Oregon, I've always had a good run at and enjoyed quite a lot. And actually, let's go with Oregon.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I see that we've got some questions from the club members rolling in here. Originally, I was going to have Martin, hello Martin, our club president, curate these, but I've actually got them all up on my screen here. So okay. I'm going to rattle some of these off here. Ragged Edge Rally asks, with respect to having and developing a good in-car relationship, what do you look for? What do you expect from your driver on that front? What part of that relationship is his or hers?
Yeah, good question. I'm just trying to think. I almost certainly have never co-driven for a female, and I don't know why that is. Of course, that's just how it goes. But certainly it's what do you expect from the driver? Good question, whoever that was. Oh, sorry, Ragged Edge Rally, there you go. Good question. You expect commitment from them. You expect them to basically give everything or give their best shot all the time. You know, you don't want or certainly I didn't want to arrive at an event, whether it be an hour from home or 10,000 miles, for someone to be half in. You know, that if they're committed to going to the event with an amount of cost and an amount of time, you want them to be invested into it and to do their best. And you both want to get to the end, and you both have an agenda to set, but their agenda to you is as much as important as yours to them. For the co-driver, again, it was get yourself through the event with no mistakes. But for a driver, it might be, well, I want to finish in this position in class, or I want to win the event, or I want to just get to the end with every stage, or whatever it is. They ought to have some sort of plan of what how they're going to attack the event, and that's useful for a co-driver to know.
Fantastic. Okay, Brandon Pace, whom everybody in the club knows, asks, what is the hardest stage to call notes that you've ever run?
Hi, Brandon. Good question. I think it might be one in Finland where the road just looks like a roller coaster. And you're always in the back of your mind, is it going to hurt when we land? And sometimes it does. There's a couple in Finland, many of them, which a lot of the pro co-drivers will know far better than me. I've only been a couple of times, but the famous Owen Poja stage is difficult. But there's a couple that were used. I think Rurimaki, once we used as a shakedown, and there are so many crests, and they all look the same, and they all come up at a different point in the note. So it could be the start of a straight, at the end of the straight. The car speed is very different. The positioning over the crest needs to be different, and you have to be absolutely spot on. Whenever the road is undulating and the driver can see across the top of it all, that's when it's difficult.
Christina Tomlinson, another longtime member of KWRC, hello Christina, asks, well, I'm going to modify this question just slightly because I asked part of it earlier.
Okay.
Of all the rallies that you've done, does one stand out in memory as a particular success, or one that you enjoyed more than others, and which one was that and why?
Hi, Christina. Thanks for the question. I don't know if any one event sticks out. A lot of them are so different. I've been fortunate enough to race on all types of surface and all types of conditions and all sorts of. But I'm going to wind back to the Isle of Man, the little tiny rock in the Irish Sea, close to us, where it's very famous for motorcycle racing, but they do a lot of rallies there as well. I was there. I must have gone twice a year for 10 years, and the last time I was there was a while ago now, 7 or 8 years ago, maybe more. But I finished, I was in the British Championship with Jason Pritchard, a fast Welsh driver from the UK, or from Wales, I should say, who we were in the Group N Pro Drive Subaru at the time, and finished our first podium in the British Championship, or first podium with him in the British Championship that year. We were third overall, behind, I think, Gwyndaf Evans, so father of Elvin Evans at the moment, who everyone will know, I'm sure, and Keith Cronin came second. It was horrendous weather. You couldn't see a thing. The fog was here in front of your face. The windshield was misted up. The rain was coming down, and it was just a battle to get to the end. But Jason got us to the end, and we worked very hard for that podium finish, and I think that sticks out as one.
Excellent. Rebecca Sargent, hello Rebecca, asks, please tell us about a time where you ended up surprised at your own skill or your own performance in an event.
Hi, thanks for the question. I think I'm going to wind back to China again with Mark, and we did an event which was a round of the Asia Pacific series, which is quite a big series that I'd never done a round of before. The first event I did with Mark, we had a disaster. We were leading by quite a long way and got excluded for some infringement, shall we say, that was not entirely clear to either us or the organisers what was going on. But we were excluded, and that was that, and we took it. And we bounced back. He came back, and I think it was Patrick Sandell we were racing against. We were in a Mitsubishi Evo, and he might have been as well. And And basically it was like 2 seconds apart on every stage, the whole rally for 2.5 days. And you had to pick your tyre choice, you had to pick your tyre pressures, your spare parts, because some stages were rough, you carried spare parts, some you didn't because you didn't want the weight. And we got through that event and we won it by not very much, having done a faultless event, but on the back of an exclusion the event before, which was really, really in the back of our minds. And we knew none of us could make a mistake, and we knew that the pressure was kind of on from ourselves, but from the team as well. And that one went to plan, and that was kind of sweet.
I'm actually going to expand on that for a moment, because you touch on a topic that's sort of core to rally, and that's the mindset of pressing on regardless, or press on regardless. But we don't often get the chance to talk to someone who's had the breadth and depth of experience that you have. Talk about what it takes when setbacks happen, and how you get into the mindset of pushing it aside and moving on and continuing.
Yeah, and setbacks will happen. They might happen on your first day, and they'll continue to happen. And preparation, that word that we've all heard and we all know what it means, but it's life gets in the way, right, with these things. When you start off, I was at college or working as well, and we were in the evenings building the car or running the car at the start, but we kind of knew that if we want to do this and we want to do it seriously, and that was my outlook from the beginning, really. I wanted to kind of give this my best shot, and I want to have a proper go at it, and I want to do it right. And therefore, being ready and being prepared, whether that be reading the rule books inside out and understanding them, or asking if there was something I wasn't sure about, or preparing the car with all the spare parts, not just some of them, but all of them, and do we know where they are and how to get them and who's coming with us and all those things. And setbacks do happen, but if you're giving it your best shot and you're doing your best, and if you make a mistake, you learn from it and you find out why, and you come back stronger next time, you'll do all right. You'll do all right, and you'll have some good days and you'll have some pretty terrible ones. When you've crashed in the middle of the forest and it's dark and raining and you're in the ditch and it's 3 a.m, it's not much fun. But when you get back to the bar and have a beer and tell everyone about it afterwards, it's good fun. So keep going.
Fantastic. My Drive asks, how can a co-driver who's just starting out develop their skills outside of the rally car?
Yeah, good question. Number of ways. Basically, anything you can think of. There's so much now online, so much in-car footage on YouTube and on essentially anywhere online. You can watch it, and the fortunate thing about being English speaking is there's a lot of English notes out there on online to watch them and try and understand them a bit, see how different drivers are doing the same thing. If you can find the same piece of road with two different drivers and you can hear what's going on, that's interesting to compare. And then there's of course the fitness side of things, being strong and fit and active and just ready to take any sort of punishment that might come your way in a way, and injury recovery, that all plays into as well. But there's many ways, and I think that's quite important for us to be doing those things. That it doesn't cost anything, a little bit of time perhaps to make sure you've read the rules and the regulations specific to those events, and know where you stand. If you got a question in a driver's briefing and you're not sure, put your hand up and ask it. And I was always told from day one, if something you don't know, ask the question, because the guy behind you might be asking you next time. So it works both ways with these things.
Fantastic. Christina has another question here. She's wondering, do you have a surface preference, tarmac, gravel, snow, and why, if you do?
Not snow, I would say. Or not. It's certainly not snow if it's anywhere near Ontario, because those events are scary, shall we say, bits of them anyway. And it's all right when it's the hardest thing, actually. In all seriousness, the hardest thing is when it's neither one nor the other, where it's not wet. When it's full wet tarmac, it's okay. When it's fully dry tarmac, it's okay. When it's in the middle, it's very difficult. And that's the same with gravel and snow. When you get events that are patchy or bits and pieces, but a fully dry tarmac event in a very, very fast, normally aspirated two-wheel drive car that revs to 10,000 RPM and you can't hear yourself think and you have to scream the pace notes. back to the Isle of Man again. I think that's probably the place to be.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Max McCons asks, what, and this might be a touchy one, what mistake have you made that became your most valuable lesson? And I'm assuming he means in the sport.
Yeah, any of them and all of them, and you do make them. Early on, late calls in pace notes is such something that co-drivers are so very aware of doing, and you know when you've done it. It can be a split second, and you know it's too late, and you know the driver can't react, and that just comes on experience. Winding back to early days again, we'd moved from I forget now what the car was. It was a Ford KA. We'd moved out of the Ford KA series, which we'd won, and that was a super competitive little series, slow cars but fast drivers. And we'd gone up to the Super 1600 car, which is like a 250 horsepower factory built 2-wheel drive car with loads of grip and loads of power and not very much weight. And on a Welsh rally somewhere, I think, and we were new to it, and we could tell that we were new to this, and it was going to take some time to learn. And yeah, I was a split second late on one of the on a hairpin actually. So fast piece of road, blind maybe 50 meters, and then a hairpin. So if you called the hairpin too early, the driver would hear it, and there's a risk he'd back off too early. But if you called it too late, game over. So, and I did. I was split second too late, and I knew as it was coming out, and he knew as it was coming out that it was too late. He did the right thing. He didn't slow down. But as soon as he heard the note, it was too late, and we were lucky. We spun the car and went off backwards between two trees or onto a little embankment, and then managed to drive out, having only lost about 20 seconds. But that was an eye-opener that things move quickly, and when you go up a category or you move into a faster car or a faster driver, you've got to be on your toes. And I'm not sure there'd be any co-driver that could say honestly they've never done it.
That actually raises an interesting, I'm going to tangent off that just for a moment. It raises an interesting question, because anyone that's watched the sport or has been involved with the sport in other aspects, they know that there are going to be certain challenges to expect when they take on a role such as co-driving, calling the notes at the right time, calling the correct note on the page, and so on and so forth. But were there any sort of things that you weren't expecting that came as a shock when you actually started doing this at speed?
Sometimes when drivers want the notes quite late and they don't retain, Travis won't mind me saying, but he knows that he doesn't retain information as well as he'd like, and it might be something to do with his background on two wheels. It might not, I don't know, but he's aware of that, which is a good thing in itself. And he said from the start, he said, I don't retain information very well, so I need the notes pretty late. And for me, the first, you can do all the testing you like and you're up to speed, but actually the first stage of the first event, I got a feeling for that quite quickly about actually how, in my mind, how late he wanted the notes. And for him, it's perfect. For him, it works. He hears the note, he sees the corner, he does it. It all works together, and it's great, and he's very good at it. But for me, it was like, oh, okay, I'm going to have to really be on point here, because if I am a split second is too much. If I'm just a fraction late, it's going to be too late for him. So that took some adjusting to, should we say. And it always, every time I jump back in the car, it just takes a couple of half a kilometre just to really get that timing absolutely perfect. And again, that's not uncommon, I think. We don't race every weekend. World Championship guys are out doing it week in, week out. If they're not testing, they're competing. If they're not competing, they're doing recce's. And you really fall into that groove. Like, soccer players playing week in, week out, you get razor sharp. With the best will in the world, a domestic series is going to be 8 events maximum. Chances are you're not doing any testing, and you're not getting much time to be on the ball. So again, harping back to that question about what does a driver offer to the co-driver in terms of information and relationship, them knowing that, okay, I'm a bit rusty and I need to take half a day or one stage or half an hour or whatever it is to get up to speed and get confident again and find that timing. That's an important thing to get.
Fantastic. Got one here from Kevin DeVries. Lance and the folks at Vermont Sports Car run a very tidy operation, But was there anything that you brought from your experiences, say working for the Red Bull Formula One team, that you brought over that helped them or aided them or brought them up at all?
Well, you're right. They do have a very slick operation, and they do have some very experienced guys on the engineering and on the technical and on mechanics side of things as well. And they've been doing it a long time, but there's always something. And with a team of any size, part of its success is always relying on information from every single person and drawing on everybody's experience. For me, it was, okay, what do we carry in the car? I wanted to know what spare parts were there, what tools were there, where were they, how were they in the car? If I used one, how would the team know about it? What would they...
Uh-oh. Robbie, are you still there?
I've got you, yeah. Have you got me?
Yeah, you dropped out for about 10 or 15 seconds there. If you wouldn't mind just repeating your last couple of sentences, I'd be much obliged.
Yeah, sorry. I wanted to know every detail about what was in that car that could be helpful to us, and I wanted to know if something changed or if I used something or if they'd moved something, how did we communicate that? And so it was all about, for me, it was the communication between me and the guys working on my car. So Travis would kind of he would focus on the performance of that stage or that morning or that day. But for me, it would be, right, okay, if I have to fit the lights, where's the tool? Is it where I thought it was? Is it the right tool? Who did it belong to? Where does it go back to? If it hasn't been put in the car, where do I find it? All these little tiny questions, like here's another one. Changing a spare tire in the rally car, but the wheel nuts are covered in mud and dirt and grit and all the rest of it. How do we get around that? Coming up with a solution if possible, and just the little detail things that sometimes you can bring. And am I carrying too much stuff? Are we carrying too many parts or too many tools? And can we shave down the weight slightly? Or just the little detail things. And a lot of it they already taken care of, to be honest. But there's always something.
Fantastic. Well, seeing that that basically is the end of the live chat list of questions, I'm just going to move us towards the end of this by asking, given everything that you've already accomplished, it's difficult to sort of focus on these things with the whole COVID situation going on, but what's next for Robbie Durant? What goals do you have for your competition future?
Yes, it's an interesting question, especially with the current situation. 2020 would have... how they'd gone. We were all set to do the full ARA series this year.
Sorry, Robbie. We did just have it right at when you started speaking. We had another dropout. So if you wouldn't mind,
I'm sorry,
starting the answer again. I don't know whose end it's on, but internet, these things happen. So
yeah, for sure, it's ticking away here, but hopefully you got me now.
I have you now. Yeah. So
okay.
What does the future bring for Robbie?
Yeah, I mean, just winding back to 2020, it would have been obviously very different for many people for many different reasons. But we were all set to do ARA a full season with Travis and with Brandon Semenuk in the other car. That obviously got changed slightly, and now going forward, I don't know, to be honest. We'll have to wait and see when we can travel is the main thing. Even events here in the UK are somewhat curtailed and shortened and postponed. So I definitely keen to come out and do some more rallying. My goal is to compete at the sharp end, and if I can't do that or not able to do that for whatever reason, then it would probably be step back from the co-driver role, but still be involved somehow with a team or with a championship or a series or whatever it might be. But for me, the focus is competing at the sharp end. And if 2021 allows that, then great. And if not, then yeah, we'll find something.
Fantastic. All right. Well, I really appreciate the time that you've taken in your afternoon or your evening to talk to our club. This has been fantastic. I'm sure that everybody has truly enjoyed having you. I certainly have.
I hope so.
And I don't know what else to say, but thank you very much. And the entire club wishes you all the success in the future. Again, we don't know what's going to happen with 2021, but certainly there's a lot more to come for you. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for inviting me on to speak a little bit about past and present, and good luck to everyone out there, and Happy New Year.
Thank you very much, Robbie. Have a nice evening. Thank you very much for everybody joining us today. Really appreciate all the engagement through the live chat. Please look forward to our next live speaker next weekend at the same time, 3 p.m. on Sunday, where we will be speaking to Antoine Lestage. Once again, thank you very much. And this concludes the first of the live streams for the Kitchener-Waterloo Rally Club. Have a great evening, everyone.